Got a question from Max. Now, anytime you get a question about weightlifting for a guy named Max, hey, you know it's going to be a good question. Some time ago, you mentioned that if you had the chance to do it all over again, you'd use chains for a lot of your main lifts. And he then says, I'm a fellow chain enthusiast. So chains, for those of you who don't know, they're chains. And the ones I use come from Bigger, Faster, Stronger, and they're also collars. So they screw onto the edge of the weights, barbell, and you lock them down. And as you go down on a squat, say, it gets lighter. And as you come up, the chains come up off the floor and it gets heavier. The nice thing about chains, and I've said this for a long time now, is you no longer as a coach have to say down slow, up fast, because the chains kind of make you do it. It seems there are many cautionary tales out there warning athletes not to do too much chain weight. Yeah, okay. But then he goes on, I've heard the figure of 10% as a maximum proportion of total load. Okay. And I'm curious to ask why. Max, I don't know. That's nothing. I don't have a formula for that. In fact, I have fond memories. Now, you have to make sure you have good spotters, but one time, some of my senior athletes, they decided to do this interesting contest where they strapped nothing but chains on the bench and squat. And it was fascinating because it was so much harder to control the bar than anybody thought. In fact, I'd even go to say it was probably dangerous. We had 3 spotters on it, but still, it's just that bar runs all over the place. I would say that's too much. So that'd be, 100% of the load or something like that. But my chains, I think, I have the big ones from Bigger, Faster, Stronger. So I think they're 57 pounds. So mine would be heavier for what we use them for. I can also see that one might overload the supporting structures, such as the upper back on the squat, by pushing to super maximal loads at the top end. That's interesting because one of the reasons I like chains, Max, and this is very specific, is it did remind me of training the old rack, like some of my heroes. Bill March, who didn't die that long ago, great American weightlifter and a Mr. Universe, I think. He used functional isometric contraction. And one of the things he said that really helped him is, if you're doing quarter squats in the front squat position with 800 pounds, standing up with 400 is not going to seem very heavy. So this is one of those things where your mileage is going to vary, okay? However, I'm not a power lifter and I don't really mind about specificity. I don't take big jumps in load anymore, and chains are working out well with me. I've got around knee tendonitis, a groin tear, and a few other issues utilizing chains, and they put 15 kilograms on my max front squat in quite a short time period. So I'd say you should do these. I regularly use up to 50% chain weight for squats, and it feels great. I would love to hear your opinions on this, whether I'm setting myself up for any spectacular failures down the line, and on how you use chains if you had the chance to rewind back to your 31-year-old self, my current age. Well, my 31-year-old self overtrained constantly, so let's not use him for an example, Max. He was a bit of a loon. He was strong, but he was crazy. The reason I like the idea of chains, especially if you can make them work with deadlifts, I say yes. Almost all the pressing family and the squat family. So presses for sure, squats for sure. When I would press, I had this, it was an old milk crate. Now, the reason I say it's an old one, because it was the ones that were made out of pure metal, and it could handle a lot of weight. I would sit down on it, and the box is only about that tall. So when I was military pressing, it's interesting. So you had to take the weight off the rack. You had to kind of front squat all the way down to the milk crate, and then from there press. It wasn't that heavy, but it is hard to, sit at the bottom of that box and then at the end of it, roll forward and stand up. Squats, presses, no question. If you can make deadlifts work, I think it'd be good too. I mean, I've seen online people doing like Olympic lifts with them, and I just can't. I don't know if that's a good idea. I could see someone doing like clean or snatch pulls with them. But again, for those of you who've ever used chains and you start to add speed to them, I mean, I don't want, whips at the bottom of the bar, as they accelerate up. I don't know if that's safe. But yeah, if I could, that in this imaginary world we're in right now, Max, yeah, that would have been fun to do my whole career. The one nice thing about using chains, at least in my experience, it's you never miss. I just, you can get a little squirrely at the top of some lifts, in the press family especially, but you never miss reps. You always seem to be able to make it. And the other thing I like about it is just that acceleration. Now, there was a time where I had, 7 platforms. We had chains on every platform. We had, chains on every press, chains on every squat. And then on the platforms, we had 7 platforms where we were doing the Olympic lifts, and then we're doing hurdle walkovers and say tumbling all at the same time in these conga lines. And visitors would come in and freak out because of that. There's a noise that chains have. Zhang, 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 zhang. Well, you multiply that, by 14, and it really gets loud. I love them. Yeah, I'd love, in this great imaginary world, I would still do them, and I would have invested in Apple. Okay. Well, thank you so much. A good question, and I hope you keep me informed on how this journey goes. And good job on getting over those injuries. And gentle listeners, I hope you paid attention to the fact that he had a couple injuries and he worked around them by using a new tool. And there's some logic there, okay?